Welcome to this episode. I'm Mohammed Yunus, CEO of vFairs, and today I'm thrilled to explore the future of events with none other than Adam Perry. Adam is a leading voice in event technology, co-founding Event Industry News and the iconic Event Tech Live, which has become a global stage for innovations in our field. With over a decade of experience, Adam has positioned himself as one of the industry's most respected voices in event technology. Our conversation today will dive into AI's role in shaping events brand of the future, where we'll uncover how artificial intelligence is not only reshaping the way we organize events, but also influencing how events brand evolve in a crowded market. Adam's insight from Event Tech Live and his extensive work with event technology awards will help us understand how organizers can leverage AI to build sustainable, engaging brands and deliver memorable experience. Let's get started. Adam, you have become such a prominent figure in the event technology space with Event Industry News and Event Tech Live. Can you tell us a bit more about your journey? How did you first get into events industry and what led you to focus on event technology?
Yeah, sure. Well, the events industry in general, I fell into it. It wasn't a career path. It wasn't even really what I would class as a visible sector to me. Yes, I went to events myself and all that kind of stuff, but I never thought about it as a career path now. My first foray into the events industry was working with a B2B publication, but they just purely focused on festivals and outdoor events. And what struck me at the time, I was very young, very, very young, a lot younger than I am now. What struck me at the time was that industry itself, B2B published, really hadn't evolved much. It was clear to see, they would still printing 10,000 magazines and sending it to a mailing list that they had, and companies were advertising in those publications, hoping that their message resonated with whoever received it, hoping they actually read it, and business would turn out from that. And that really struck me as a really old and antiquated way of doing marketing. So at the time, me and my now co-founder, who actually was my manager at the time, presented the idea. Not a revolutionary idea now, but at the time it was kind of on the border of what was being done in terms of new models, was to take the existing website for the publication, start to post news up there so it gives somebody a reason to go, expand the audience and drive some more revenue through digital advertising. And in a long story short, that company just really didn't like that idea. So I left in a huff and had a friend who was a web developer, helped me put a publication together, which is now Event Industry News. And I started doing this in my spare time. It was just, I had immediately a passion for the events industry. I knew it was an industry I wanted to work in for a long time. And I just found myself writing content, speaking to people, doing things around another job I had at the time in a totally different sector. It was what they now call the side hustle, right? It was my side hustle at the time. And actually, I had a employer that was aware or kind of found out that I'd got this digital publication, and ultimately gave me a very nice and friendly ultimatum, which was either spend that time working for us, or maybe you should go and do that full time, because he thought it was a distraction, which, he might have been right at the time. I didn't see it that way when I was much younger, but very much so. He was probably right. And I made that jump. He kind of brought me back into the office one day and said, "Have you made a decision?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I'm going to go. I'm going to go for it." And he was like, "Congratulations. I wish you all the best. If you ever need a place to come back to, the door's always open for you. But as a business owner, I think if you've got a passion for it, go for it." So we kind of launched this publication and grew and grew and grew. And what brought us around to technology was really just a passion again for technology. I've always been super interested in the bleeding edge of what technology is doing for us, not just from a business perspective, but from a societal perspective, like how we're evolving as humans in terms of the way that we integrate with technology and use technology. And I always class myself as quite an early or first adopter of stuff. Like, I literally would probably be in line to have a neural link implanted into my brain if that was allowed already. And I started writing on Event Industry News about technology. Now, the beauty of that platform was that we could see all of this engagement and interaction with technology content So we knew we had something there. But what I found really, really difficult at the time was the discovery of these companies other than some super big names that are ubiquitous. And I was like, but what are these companies doing and what are organizers doing? What are they doing with the technology? And a good friend of mine, actually, James Morgan, who now is in Saudi Arabia, working in the events industry over there, we had lunch at a trade show here in the UK. And he suggested, he was like, do you know a great way to learn about all these companies' award programs? I always look at award programs of like who's doing what in a particular category and things like that. But there wasn't any awards or there wasn't a program for people using or developing technology. So me and my business partner on the back of a Post-it note thought, right, well, we'll launch an awards program. We initially thought we'd just be an online awards program. People would enter and then we'd announce winners online, and that was kind of it. But actually, in our very first year of the Event Technology Awards, we had brands like Adidas enter. We had agencies like George P. Johnson enter. We had Verizon. We had Barclaycard and things like that. So there was this real like immediate interest, I think, from the industry in themselves getting recognition for being technologically minded and using technology to develop events. And we decided to host the ceremony as a physical event. And what presented an opportunity at the time was to use that event during the day to organize some very, very laser focused content on this subject matter. So we went out there and worked really hard to bring a couple of different speakers and minds together. And when we took a step back, that conference we realized was a great room of people from the events industry, but from very different verticals. You know, we had the CTO from UBM at the time in the room, but we also had the event delivery team from Adidas in the room, and we had a bank in the room, and we had somebody from Pharma in the room. And we were like, you don't generally see this at industry shows. You've either got association events or conference organizer events or trade show organizer events. You don't generally see a lot of people in the same room. So that was that moment that we realized that this topic resonated with the entire industry, and we felt that there was something more there.
Yeah. And just to put the year, like, so again, you know, whether it's Event Tech News, Event, you know, ETL Live, or whether it's awards, just can you give me the years, like when each one of these things was?
Yeah, so Event Industry News was launched in 2010. The Event Technology Awards was launched in 2012. And then this year will be the official year of the Event Tech Live brand here in London.
Perfect. Thank you. You know, congratulations on being one of the leaders within this category.
Thank you.
So again, when ChatGPT came, and you know, that's when people actually start thinking about AI. The very first thing that people thought of AI was that it can help generate content. Yeah. And again, you know, you of course manage the Event Industry News app. So if you can just walk me a bit through how AI has helped you as a company, whether it is for the Event Tech News or in general in your operations, like where do you see value in that?
Yeah,
because from my perspective, again, it helps in a lot of other places, but the more I see AI content, the more sometimes genuine content even stands out. But at the same time, of course, AI is there to actually make all of us productive. So, but that's just my point of view. I'm sure like you might be different experience. So
yeah, it's a big topic, and I think we'll have to probably divide it up into kind of a couple of sections, maybe like us as a business. I think the experience of readers from a media perspective, and then the events and the attendee experience and the operational event delivery kind of side of things. But us, you know, we're doing the same. I think, you know, as a business, great use of AI we found is comparing contracts and changes in contracts and things like that. Like that's made it super easy for us to make visible of like, right, the venue now wants to do this in this contract and stuff. So that's speeding up the process, automations and kind of those processes. Interaction with our own content. I know one of the great things I've been able to use or very much speed up time is quizzing databases around information and data, so we can get a really good, clear picture on kind of like who we've got in the room from a registration process, who we're missing, that kind of stuff. So very much a data analysis and analytics. I think it's helping the sales team with things like we use Fathom to kind of have conversations around that, and then using their tools to kind of really make clear what the objective was for a supplier, what they want out of an event, what they want out of a media campaign and things like that, and then help us to craft those things. Now, we don't ever send out exactly what like ChatGPT or any of the tools kind of just spit out, because I think the nuances in the craft of you kind of putting your own personality back into things and making sure that it's accurate and stuff. From an event industry perspective, it is actually causing us a bit of a challenge. Now, and this is in two areas, and it's both in submissions of awards and submissions of content for the show. And there's two challenges. One challenge is, well, judges not just glazing over, seeing the same kind of terminology and stuff like that over and over again in awards. You know, people don't realize that what they think is a really strong entry actually looks very, very similar to a lot of other people's entries now. So they're actually doing themselves a little bit of a disservice there, just kind of going with that. And I think from a session point of view, there's two challenges. One is the quality and the quantity of information that somebody used to provide on a topic was a bar in which you could measure that they were at least somewhat knowledgeable about that subject matter. Now with AI, that's really, really challenging. Although you can tell it's AI, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that person's not knowledgeable on that. They just might have used that tool to help them submit something. But on the other end, we use that information to also then populate agendas and event apps and platforms and stuff like that and try and promote the content. And I think people are becoming quite savvy to see that that content's AI. So you have these phrases and terms and things that crop up constantly with AI content. So that's a challenge, because now that's actually creating a little bit more work for our team in kind of finessing those so that there is some differentiation and some personality and stuff like that. And it doesn't just like look like verbatim over and over and over again, especially when you have Event Tech Live, for example, and we've got numerous topics around AI itself. And then all of a sudden they all like just start homogenizing into this one kind of like thing. And that's a challenge as well. So as much as it's good, I think it's throwing some curveballs at the moment that we're still trying to figure out as an industry.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, any conference that we attend nowadays, specifically within the SaaS world, I'll come back to the event tech in particular, but within the SaaS conferences, 80% of all the topics are AI. Yeah. Like somehow they're all AI linked. Which brings back to let's come to the event just tech in general. As an event organizer, and again, you of course organize your own conference. As an attendee of one of these events, how can AI help you? So again, I know that I'm coming to Event Tech Live, and a lot of people would be coming. What's your wish list of where AI can be within the entire event planning journey or event setup journey, where you feel that it can really help and add value even right now with the tools that we have available right now? There's always a future, but with the things that you have seen already, where does it make a big difference?
Yeah, so I'm already starting to see companies and platforms really think about the way that an attendee interfaces with their platform. Very much actually going down and thinking about that experience of, yes, we have these traditional navigation kind of layouts and things like that, because there's going to be a lot of people that are used to that and don't want to change, and that's absolutely fine. But there's much more going down the route, and I think this is also looking at kind of like either the sector that they're working with or even possibly the generation that they're working with, of very much going down the text ChatGPT prompt interface. Because I think Google has been ubiquitous for such a long time now. People are used to going, here is some information, give me results, right? And then going deeper into that. And I think that's actually what a lot of people want. That's a really intuitive way for people to discover through the event platform or app what sessions are there, related content, other information, prompt them to say, hey, you've asked about this. Maybe the next step for you is A, B, or C. And I think, the speed in which people can get information often is the thing that gets over the hurdle of somebody saying, this technology is rubbish, it doesn't work. And that's not, it doesn't work. That's their own frustration of them not being able to find the information quickly in a concise way that they want. So I think that's interesting. And also then making that platform personalized to them. So we put people into buckets of intent at VentTech Live. Some people are very much coming with the intent of just focusing on the exhibitors, looking at the technology. They're there to shop, right? They are there just to shop. Others you might put into the bucket of knowledge and education. They are there predominantly to inform themselves, to feed that information back to attendees and things like that. And then I won't go on and on with all these buckets that we've got, but then you have like the networker bucket, right? They are at the industry show because it is an industry show and they know that their network and their people are there. So it's an opportune time for them to meet and speak to people and things like that they know. That experience in terms of what that technology and that platform really is for that person is three different things. One should just have the content and agenda at the forefront. One should just have the networking technologies at the forefront. And the other should just have anything that's around lead generation, sales, meetings, bookings, that kind of things, demos, that kind of stuff. And I think at the moment, on the whole, and the industry is catching up rapidly, that the way that the technology is built is that it just like you have to go and find that for you. And then when you come out of it, you kind of have to go back into it to find it again and stuff like that. And I just see people having their own personalized dashboard of like, we think this is what you want to come through. And as you interact with it, it tweaks it and it molds it to your experience to make it the best experience it can be. So I'm already seeing some of that come through, and that's really exciting, I think. The other side of things, which I will just mention, is recollection of information. This is something, Eunice, that I've talked about quite a lot extensively over the last sort of 2 years or so. And we go to events to generate leads, to generate business, to generate an extension of network or to grow our networks or to gain knowledge. But we have this big flaw as humans. And although we think we've got a great memory, we haven't. We actually haven't got a great memory. There is a thing called the forgetting curve, which 5 days after you've maybe attended an event, a session, a meeting, something like that, unless you take substantial steps, you actually forget about 80% of that information that you first absorbed, which when you think about what people go to events for is a real big problem, because that means that 80% less of the educational content is going back to the business that sent that person to go. Maybe 80% of the opportunities in terms of data and intent and kind of context around a business meeting is lost. I also think for events, it's probably actually compounded by the fact that we also have things like travel. Some people indulge in alcohol. You know, there's other things, late nights, early mornings, that all affect our cognitive kind of capabilities. So I think it's probably actually less for events than 20%. And what I think, and I'm starting to see tools out there that are coming into the event space that are going to allow people to retain much more of that information and effectively feed it back either into their own business or back to the marketing team, sales teams, so they can effectively follow up. What effect does that have on the events industry? Well, the ROI is going to go up because people are going to be able to effectively follow up and act on that information much better.
I was sitting with someone who organized one of the largest conferences in Europe just last week, and one of the things that he mentioned is that because of like post-COVID, because of remote work environment, the restrictions and how people, like when people sign up for these events or when people buy the tickets, have changed a lot. And his numbers kind of shocked me. His numbers were that more than 50% of all of the ticket sale happened in the last 1 month. Yeah. It was like leading up to the event, I was extremely anxious. And he has been doing it for the last 10, 12 years. He's one of the most respected name out there in the industry. And it was like, it used to be completely opposite. You know, I used to give early bird discount, and the moment the conference would be over, the next 2 weeks, 50% would sign up. And really the next 1 year was trying to get the remaining 50%. But things have flipped, and it was like 50% came in the last one month, and really the 50% of that 50%, which is 25% of the total, came in the last 1 week. Just your experience, you're in this industry, etc. Like, well, is that pretty common? I was asking the same question to Miguel. He mentioned the same thing. But what are you seeing as trends of why people are signing up late, or are there any cool strategy where one can make people sign up or commit early for a conference?
Yeah. So whoever that person is, I totally agree with them. That absolutely is the case, and that's the case, and that's the trends that we see and hear from many of the other organizers that we interview and discuss these types of things with. I think why is numerous factors. In all honesty, I think remote work has obviously impacted that and affected that. Human nature used to be that if you were in an office 5 days a week, then going to a conference was a break away from that. That could be a day or 2 days. That was a great reason to step away from the desk and kind of get a breath of fresh air and a new. It's harder to pull somebody away from home, right? It really is. But interestingly on that, and I think this is to that, we are actually seeing an upward trend in virtual events. There's lots of people that say virtual events don't work and they're dead and things like that. But based on our registration stats for Event Tech Live, we're probably seeing year on year a growth in the number of events organized growing by about 15% or so from the previous year. So I think people are still interested in content and ways to attend events, but they're not necessarily looking to attend physically, or people are organizing, maybe even transitioning physical events to virtual. What are the other reasons? I think people don't necessarily want to be that heavily committed to stuff. There are free events like Event Tech Live, and there are then events that are thousands of dollars to attend. And does somebody want that commitment? There was a baby boom through the pandemic because nobody had anything else to do. So there's lots of people now with young children and family commitments and things like that might not necessarily have been there before. Some of the tactics that I am seeing other people employ is purchase a ticket with an early bird or something like that, and either get one of three things as a get out of jail free clause. One is a refund up to a certain date with no questions asked. That's a great thing to say. So, all right, I can take advantage of the early bird now, and then I know 7 days out from the event, if my plans change, I can get a refund. Fantastic. So that brings that early commitment forward, because there is that, there's a break clause in that contract. Another way to do that some other organizers are doing is like, if you can't come, then we will push your ticket to the following year. So that means that they've got advanced bookings for that year and they're not necessarily losing revenue. Or to that point, a transfer scheme. So they can transfer it to somebody else in their organization that can go. They're kind of, some people have employed those for a long, long time. Others are starting to employ those now as a way to get people around it, because early birds and things like that do work, but they're so common now that I think people have just become used to it. And it really depends on kind of like the distance in between that. But what I'm also seeing is very much people employ the program of rewarding legacy and loyalty of attendees to people. So giving them access to things or privileges or benefits in and around the event for continued support of attendance and things like that. We all have those events that we're fond of and we probably go to every single year. And they're going, we want to reward you for your support. We want to continue and we want to elevate you and actually give other people the sign that you are a founding member of this event or something like that, or a decade attendee and stuff. And although those things haven't got monetary value, they're quite valuable to people. People like that prestige.
I agree. Again, like it definitely increases your loyalty. I've seen some of these events where people are the founding members, and again, then they are going out for a retreat like before or after the event, just to make them feel special. So you're still part of this big event, but you're also part of this small community that no one else can be part of, right? So I definitely see a lot of value in that. So thanks for sharing some of those tips. I also agree with you. And again, I'm glad that a lot of other event tech providers don't see it that way, but virtual events are growing. And again, are the beneficiary. We have been a beneficiary of that. We continue to be a beneficiary of that just because we started it that way. But again, I also agree that, in-person and virtual events, given that both of them are growing, one is just better than the other. For some people to attend, depending on where they are. With AI, specifically in the last few months, or let's say maybe even a year, I see that when people meet with each other in person, that even has now more value than before AI, because then you see that this thing is genuine. So just with the rise of AI, where do you see events are going to go over the next couple of years? Because in many cases, a lot of these problems can be solved with AI. So does that make you go to less events because you don't need that knowledge? You just mentioned, AI has just bring the knowledge par of everyone pretty much at the same par, because, with ChatGPT, we all have this. So does AI help increase more events, or is it going to just decrease the amount of events that are going to happen?
So I think, like anything, AI is a tool, right? But it's no replacement for events in any format, whether that be digital, physical, whatever. Because if that was the case, we've got the internet, we wouldn't need events, right? And they just wouldn't exist. But there's something, I would almost say, like on a cellular level, about people connecting in some way, right? Whether that be, like I said, digitally through FaceTime, on a webinar, around an event, around the community, physically. What was interesting to me, I'll give you an example of this. I recently, for the first time, visited HubSpot's Inbound in Boston this year. I always like to get to an event that's not industry related, just to experience it, see how they're approaching things, see what their communities and their attendees are experiencing and how they approach things. Everybody in that room, bar one organization, was talking about all of their new AI functionality. And ultimately that's for marketing, right? Like this is for like outbound marketing, lead generation, lead conversion, cold calling, prospecting, databases, all this kind of stuff. But they were all there physically. They were all there at an event to talk to other people that were also at that event, which to me was kind of like this dichotomy of like, well, if all of this technology is so good, which it is, it's fantastic, it's great, why are they at an event? Surely they don't need an event, right? There's something different and magical about people connecting. And what it is for me is, in a world of AI automated email sequencing and digital adverts and outbound and AI sales agents and all these certain things, people still really value seeing the whites of somebody else's eyes and having an authentic conversation. And that's what events bring. And that can happen digitally or physically. People are, and this is the same for media, everybody can be a content creator these days. And people are looking for authenticity. And that's why the rise of TikTok has been so prevalent, because rather than it be this polished experience of all this kind of stuff, it's just people talking real talk, right? And don't get me wrong, some misinformation comes through that, and we have to be careful of that as well. But with events, I think there's this old saying that there's sometimes more business done at the bar than there is on the booth, right? And that's because events in general give us the dwell time to not rush to just talk about business, but to talk about you on a personal level. What are you interested? How did you get to the business? What's your family like? Have we got a deeper level of connection other than just this overarching theme of this event? And that's what brings people together. And I'm this big believer that people buy people, right? This is why influencers are so successful in some cases, because somebody felt a bond to that person, they felt relevancy, they felt a relationship, and then they could probably buy that product from anywhere on the internet or Amazon, but they decide to buy it through that person because they feel that's the right way to do business. They want to purchase it through that person to either support them or whatever. So I think actually, with some other factors as well, things like the cookieless world that we now live in from a digital ad perspective, I genuinely think, and I'm biased, so I'll say this, but I genuinely think we're just going to see a continued rise in events because people will use it as a stronger way to connect them with customers and prospects, especially customers. Customer retention is massive when it comes to events. Like you mentioned it earlier, taking somebody to a retreat. Like if you took all your customers to a retreat, they are definitely going to remember that, as long as they have a good experience, obviously. And that's the things that keep people close as customers. It's those experiences and that relationship building and relationship maintenance as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, we did kind of this internal survey with our customers, asking them about just their future plans of whether they'll be running less events, more events, or equal amount of events. And again, I'm of the opinion that with the rise of AI, events industry will actually even grow more, because the kind of genuine conversation you can have in person or virtual, like there's nothing that can beat that. You mentioned you were at HubSpot. I was there as well. I just asked someone yesterday also, but let me ask you this question. I typically ask in the end, but let's start from here. Which are 3 of your top favorite conferences that you typically attend or would like to attend, if you haven't attended some of those?
I'll not mention mine because that would be silly a bit, because of course it's one of my favorite ones. There's a small one, which is run by the Association of Event Organizers. That is a lot of other people that look and feel like me. So although some of the competitors in the room are we're after the same companies, what's really valuable about the events that they organize and their conference, which I've spoken at a couple of times and stuff like that, is that focus on that particular topic and that particular niche. And what's really valuable is the open sharing of strategy and information and knowledge and stuff like that. And some of these companies are literally enemies outside of that room. But in that room, everybody's kind of trying to just support the industry, make it stronger, make it better. So that's one of those I really love, because I feel like
What's it called? Like, is this?
It's the Association of Event Organizers conference. It's just happened a couple of months ago, last month, sorry. And that happens every year, and it's just a really good focused network of like-minded individuals that come together. Another one that I like is Web Summit. I've got a soft spot for Web Summit. I like the fact that event is obviously at scale. They've very much put a lot of effort into that nighttime economy around the event in terms of like that nighttime networking. And they also extend it. They used to do surfing and all this other stuff. But what really intrigues me about that event, and which I love, is that unlike other trade shows, the entire trade show floor, other than some big activations, changes overnight. It keeps you really engaged. It's like you need to go back and just check every booth out again, just in case you miss somebody, because they all change. So that makes it really interesting experience. If you walk down the trade show hall one day and you've seen everything, do you really need to go back around that trade show hall the second day? Maybe not. But this format, it's like, well, I definitely need to go back. So I like that because of how it reinvents itself overnight. I think those two are kind of like events that really come to my mind of like how others out there. I'll give you one event that I've not yet been to, but I really, really want to. And it's an event called RecFest here in the UK. And it's for the recruitment industry. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested in recruitment whatsoever. If I'm honest, my wife was in recruitment. I think it's a really dull subject, in terms of things like that. But they have created a festival outdoors in Nebworth Park in London through the summer. And I just really find that interesting that they have all of these people buy tickets to go. Yes, they put content on, but it's this mix of business event conference with social festival intertwined and interweaved. And maybe that's because I started out in festivals and I just love that environment. But that to me is like, yeah, why would people not want to go to that, right? They get the business justification that there's content, networking, sales, business opportunities and things like that. But they also get to have a great time in the summer. Yeah. Everybody wants to go to a festival. So why not bring the two together? So that's an event I really want. I'm scared to go to it because I feel like I might just keep going to this recruitment event that I have no relevance to, just to go to a festival, business festival. Yeah. But that's something else I think is really interesting.
And I know it's going to be a tough one, but I think I'll ask it anyways. To run a successful event, and again, different. You have the venue. I'm assuming it plays a certain part. The city, the venue. Then you have the content, which is again, who are the speakers, what people are going to learn over there, and then you have the networking piece. Just based on your experience, let's just stay within our industry because I think it will vary. In what particular order one matters more than the other? Because, of course you want all three of them to be perfect, but sometimes just budgetary reason, etc., one comes at the expense of the other.
Right. So there's two things I think are really important, and unfortunately they're not on neither of them on the list that you've just provided. They're all important things as business. You have to get the strategies right around all of them. You have to have good speakers. You have to have good content. You have to have a good sponsor exhibitor proposition. You have to be bringing the right audience in for those organizations to get value out of the event and stuff like that. But if I'm honest, I think there are two things that are often overlooked and often undervalued. One is a team or an individual at the core of that event that is extremely passionate and extremely embedded and interested in it. People gravitate towards that because it becomes more than just a place and a sell. That person is steering that event from its inner core in the direction of what that community wants. And for example, I look at my community, not necessarily as the audience that we serve, although there are definitely some people in that I would definitely call my community. On the whole, it's not their attendees, their audience. My community is actually the companies that support and fund the show. I've got their best interests at heart because if I help to deliver a great event and a business event for them and help them grow, then of course they're going to want to reinvest. But that's at the polar opposite end of what the business wants to do, right? So there's this like internal fighting of like, no, I think we should go in this direction and do this because that's what the companies need and want at this time, rather than ultimately might be what's most profitable for us or something like that. So I think that's important. And some events have that. So some events really do have that. IMEX, I think, is a great example of that. Their entire team just seems so embedded with the industry outside of the IMEX business. They go to other events, they support, they speak, they attend, they get behind other activities. That's a true reflection of a company that is at the center of an industry. But the other element of that, and I think this is often what's forgotten, is companies often look at attendance as a top line, all-encompassing figure of people. We need to get 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people through the door. But the way that I see it is actually what your job is as an event organizer is to get the groups and the pockets of the communities through your door. Is there a community around the trade shows that we can invite and provide a place for them to do business and be at the event, conferences, the brands, the agencies, all these kind of things. So the way that I look at our event is I'm not looking at this overall number of audience. I'm looking at these pockets of industry and community and association that I need to find out. It's kind of like Lego in my mind. It's like I put all of these little bricks together, that makes a fantastic building. And that's the way that I view an event. Is a great event is lots of different little tribes coming together at a moment in time around a topic or a niche or a thought. That's the way that
that's why it's hard, and that's why it's not so easy to kind of run a great event that can make everyone happy. Yeah. Adam, you raised a really good point, and again was sitting with, because both of us attended HubSpot Inbound. I met with two exhibitors just in that conference, and both of them extremely polar opposite point of view. One of them said, "Oh, this was amazing, and I got so much benefit out of this conference, etc." Purely from a And again, these are people who know their numbers like from the heart. So like great ROI, et cetera, et cetera. And the other one was like, oh, this was my worst HubSpot inbound ever. And and again, it's not even the location of their booth. They were all pretty close by. But I think I'm just going to flip it, because just for anyone to get the best experience, I can see it's coming from your heart that you want the best for any of your exhibitors and sponsors to get the best value. What are just your best recommendations of, as a trade show exhibitor, what should these guys be doing? Because, it's easy to kind of put it on the conference organizer, but I'm assuming that a lot of things that needs to be done by the exhibitor themselves. Just your top 3-5 recommendations of what these people should be doing to get the best value from your conference in particular or anyone in general.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to preface this with people often think that going to a trade show for the first time is going to be an amazing experience, right? Going to bring there's all of these people in the room. We're in the right room. We think our audience is there. There's going to be tons of business done out of this. But I liken it to like a football team. You don't become a Premier League football team overnight. You don't go out and play every single match as a goal scoring winning team. You have good matches, you have bad matches, and sometimes that's about. But the Manchester United, as an example, their average is much better because of all of the training, all of the approach, all of the conditioning, all of the follow-up, all of the rehabilitation and everything that they do. So they've got, as an entity, they've got a really, really good structure of approach, delivery, execution, follow-up. So sometimes that person could have been having a really bad experience because they just don't want to be there, right? They just don't want to be, they don't like trade shows. They've been told by the boss they've got to go. It's 17 hours away from where they live. You know, there's all of that human nature that comes around that could be the reason. The other person that you spoke to it could be the best thing because they've been eager to be at that event for 12 months. They love it. It's in their hometown. They're going to see all the mates and all that kind of stuff. So there's all of that kind of stuff. But I think first and foremost, the thing that people often miss is they book a location for the stand and then they forget about it and they don't talk to the organizer for 6 months, right? At the moment you book, that's when your relationship with that organizer starts. There's going to be huge amounts of opportunity in the lead up to the show to make sure that you're doing everything that needs to be done to get the best out of the show, to eke out every last grain of salt on every opportunity that show could present. Is there podcast opportunities? Is there guest blog opportunities? Is there a database opportunity? Is there something they need help with? Do they need a great speaker? And not necessarily putting yourself forward as a great speaker, but do you know somebody at Salesforce that would love to speak at the event? All of a sudden, you are your event organizer's best friend that you can help them. So it's a two-way relationship. We have it on Event Tech Live. We have companies that book a stand 12 months out, and we almost don't hear from them again. And it's not because we're not trying to contact them and speak to them, but it's like, oh, that's months and months away. I'll come back to that. And then, you know, I've even got exhibitors waking up now saying, oh yeah, we've got this show next month. Let's do something about it. You guys are much more experienced, by the way. You approach shows in a really proactive way. So, you know, lots of people just book it, don't engage and leave it till last minute and don't think about how that relationship with that organizer is a more longer term thing. Like, they want you to get the best out of the show because they want you to rebook. Like, that's the simple thing. I think sometimes as well, this kind of comes into the strategy at the show, not having enough people because you need to play tag. Like, sometimes people will need to go off for lunch. Trade shows are hard, right? Like, working a trade show for 8 hours solidly for 2-3 days, hard work. It's not easy. So is there enough people on the stand so there's as much energy at the end of day 3 as there is at day 1? Because people notice that when they're walking around the show. If your team are tired, not looking very happy, not looking like they're on fire, then that could be the reason that person doesn't engage with you. And I remember a story, actually, it's just from our exhibitor masterclass this last week. And we had an organizer come in and speak about their show, who is now one of our exhibitors, funnily enough. And she said that she worked on a helicopter show. I mean, I didn't even know a helicopter show existed, but she worked on a helicopter show. And in the last 30 minutes, one exhibitor who was just keeping proactive, keeping really active, sold a $10 million helicopter in the last 30 minutes on that show.
Wow.
And he came to her and said, I would never have believed you before that last 30 minutes that if we just kept the energy up, if we kept it, because lots of people wanted to leave early and they wanted to go and all that kind of stuff. I would have never believed you that the $10 million deal would land in the last 30 minutes. So I think that's something. It's like, what is your strategy? Have you got enough people in place? What's the objective and all that kind of stuff? And then ultimately, it is about post-show strategy, post-show follow-up. And I think often people, the naive sometimes come in and think that people are going to sign checks on the show floor, right?
I wish that was the case.
That's That's just the start, isn't it? Right? You've done this for a long, long time. You know that
you won't go and you won't sign the check. So why do you expect others to do that same with you?
Exactly right. Yeah, it's not a supermarket. We're not just pulling things off the shelf and we go pay for it. Yeah. So I think sometimes people often have too higher expectations. They have these big grand ideas because they've not actually thought about it. I mean, I think there's an industry statistic that you can have probably one person can have like 12 to 15 really good, solid conversations a day with people. Yep. So if you want to walk away with 100 needs, you need to kind of like factor that out in terms of your calculations. Don't get me wrong, there's lots of other ways to generate leads on Boost and other lead generation opportunities and things like that. But that's one thing. And I think they expect the conversion to come too quickly. I mean, I've even been on databases of people just immediately going, can we schedule a time for us to book you in or do a demo or sign you up? No, I'm not even on the plane. Like I think people need to think about the value that they're bringing to that prospect after the show. I really like to see campaigns which says, fantastic to meet you. Thank you very much. Here are my details. Another email 3 days later, just out of interest, Adam. I've just got something that I thought you might be interested in. Here's a case study or a white paper or a piece of news or something that I think is relevant to you. Be good to see you in a thing. 3 days later, what did you think to that news? You know, these little things, which some companies are really, really used to and really experienced at, just really starts to warm that person up that they're actually genuinely interested in, which hopefully they are, and they're not just trying to rush to sell them in. You've been in this industry a long time. Event tech could be 12 to 18-month lead cycle times. And the bigger the company you go to, the more due diligence and red tape you've got to go through as well. So that's often the big mistake is people, there's an industry stat, I think it's like you need to contact somebody 8 times post-show for them sometimes to even just respond.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So those are the 3 elements that I think if you really tie on that, what is our strategy? How can we engage with the organizer in the lead up to the show, get the most value? How are we approaching the show? How are our team enthused to be there for the full 3 days and smile and bring people onto the stand? And then what's that post-show follow-up? You generate 300 leads, you're probably going to burn through half of those. 20% of that's going to turn into conversations, 10% is going to turn into business kind of thing. I'm just throwing arbitrary numbers out there, but yeah, having a really solid post-show follow-up. And sometimes as well, just I've blabbed on a little bit now, but one event is not necessarily the event that you will convert that person from. You know, you might need to be at IMEX, at ETL, at Confex, at something else, and you'll see the same person at all of the events. So which one do you attribute the lead to?
True.
Is it the first one, or is it the second one where you actually got into a bigger, deeper conversation, or is it the third one where they said, yeah, book the demo? I think that's the thing is, you know, I want people to have a successful show at every event. I don't just want Event Tech Live to be the best event. I want people to have success at every event. But yeah, I think just having those thoughts in mind about like what are the expectations as well.
And based on your experience, just your take on swags within the booth, that's always the big one. What should we do? And, you know, how can we stand out, etc. Are they even important? Are they not important? You know,
they can be.
So your best practices on that.
They can be very unimportant. You know, am I going to rush up to a stand because they've got pens on the counter and take a pen because I desperately need a pen or I want, no offense, I don't know if vFairs have got pens, but like, do I want the vFair pen? Like, no, not really. Not unless I'd like literally have been speaking to somebody, I need to give them their phone number or something like that. And I'm desperate for a pen. I got some really, really cool swag recently for the first time in a long, long time. I don't need a water bottle. I've got them coming out of my ears. I don't need pens. I don't need rulers. Things for my children, that's interesting. Yeah, and you can actually gamify that. I'll give you an example of this before I move on to the previous one. I went to an event and they had these really cute little Highland stuffed animals, really, really nice, premium kind of thing, something that would cost maybe 30, 40 pounds here in the UK. Yeah. They weren't just giving these away. They weren't just willy-nilly giving them away because they're quite expensive. Yeah. But what they did was they offered you the opportunity to win one. And it was a very simple spin of the wheel, and it was like the clacker, and it landed on something. The interesting dichotomy with this one was that, yes, you could win the prize, but if you landed on a booby one, you had to do the forfeit. And they had somebody there filming it.
Wow.
So I think one was like sing a song, one was do a dance. It was all kind of like on the edge of like funny but slightly embarrassing kind of stuff. And they were like very clear, like, if you do this, you have to do the forfeit. If you, and what that, it drew a every time somebody walked up to that thing, it drew a crowd. So I thought that was very clever. They got lots of visibility, very, very fun activity. Everybody was funny. There's some pictures of me just in shock that I actually won one and didn't have to do a forfeit. But what that branded thing is still up in that branded cow is still up in my son's bedroom. Right? So I've got that brand there, that brand affinity with me. I'll never forget that company. Yeah. The other cool swag that I've seen, and this is a fantastic one for event profs, was 2 items that I got given to me by a company. I will give them a shout out. A company called Nadell, Sustainable Merchandise Supplier, and they gave me a very high-end passport cover with their branding on it. It's already on my passport, waiting for my next trip. So every time I travel, I'm going to be reminded of that company, that Nadell company. And it wasn't like garish. It was just like, it was a black cover, and it just had their name embossed very, very elegantly just at the bottom right-hand corner. So it was almost like, I said to them, it actually reminds me of a high-end fashion brand, the way that you've approached it. It feels like an item I'd really be happy to think. So every time I travel, I'm going to be reminded of their brand. The other element that they did give to that was a luggage tag. Now, a really good quality luggage tag, again, embossed, and it's very colourful, so you can very easily distinguish it. So every time I'm going to be traveling to an event or a holiday or something, I'm going to be reminded of their brand. That's useful. That's sticky. That's really good.
These are brilliant suggestions, and I think I have a lot of notes from my marketing team now. Adam, it was great talking to you. Again, I just want to make sure that everyone knows how to follow you, where to kind of learn more updates about Event Tech Live, Event Tech News, etc. So if you just want to let the audience know.
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn as adam.parry. Feel free to connect up with me there. I have a personal website, punchtownparry.com, which is also all of my social media handles. So if you want to connect up with me on Insta, Twitter, any of the other platforms, just search Punchtown Parry, and that's my handle there. People can find my contact details if they want to reach out to me and chat to me personally. And Eunice, thank you very much for bringing me on, having the conversation with me and asking me some fantastic questions as well.
Thank you so much, Adam. Again, great talking to you. And again, I'll see you next month at Event Tech Live. Thank you.